Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is that time of year again. This is Bill Brannick from the Office of Catholic Education, Director of Technology, Pre-K to 12. I am so excited to be able to be with you here again to kick off our Connected Educators webinar series for the 2017-2018 school year. Thank you very much for taking the time to be with us this evening. I appreciate your effort to be here and the time that you are giving up to be here with us from AoP Tech and also to be here with your colleagues. This is our third year of the Connected Educators webinar series, and it's good to see some familiar names who are attending, and also great to see some of you who are new and attending for the first time. So welcome, everyone. And October is Connected Educators Month. And certainly, if you haven't connected with people that you don't normally connect with within your school building, teachers from across the diocese, or teachers even locally, we certainly encourage you to use this month and to use this webinar as a platform for conversation, again, both within the building, across the diocese, and with other educators locally, nationally, and globally. And as always, as we ask, we always encourage and ask you to continue that conversation online across all social media platforms using the hashtag AoP Tech. So we have a great agenda planned for you this evening. But first, as we do all good things, let us begin with a prayer. And let us remember today that today is the feast day of St. Francis Assisi. Let us keep in our prayers any of those special intentions that lie within your own hearts. But certainly let us keep in our minds all those who have recently been affected by great tragedy. As well, let's keep in mind our colleagues and our students and parents for whom we do this work for. And together, in the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, amen. And if you would like to join me in the comfort of your own home, please feel free. Lord, make us an instrument of your peace. Where there is hatred, let us sow love. Where there is injury, pardon. Where there is doubt, faith. Where there is despair, hope. Where there is darkness, light. And where there is sadness, joy. O divine Master, grant that we may not so much seek to be consoled as to console, to be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love. For it is in giving that we receive, it is in pardoning that we are pardoned, and it is dying that we are born to eternal life. And we ask this through Christ our Lord. Amen. St. Francis, pray for us. St. Isidore, pray for us. St. John Newman, pray for us. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, amen. Well, once again this year, joining us, we have our Associate Director of Educational Technology, Ms. Alyssa DeVito, and as well our newest Technology Integration Coach, Mrs. Annabelle Dotsman, who are joining us and will be around a bit later in the webinar, and also will be involved in the back channel chat this evening, answering questions and being able to provide some information. So we will certainly hear from them later and appreciate their time and preparation this evening. A couple pieces of housekeeping. This year we've talked about some tips for a great webinar experience for you. So the first thing is make sure that you're comfortable. Don't feel the need to be able to sit there and take detailed notes as far as what we're talking about. The webinar is going to be archived and available to you later. You'll receive an email tomorrow night with the link to the archive, and as well it's going to be hosted on our YouTube channel. So get comfortable, sit back, grab a drink, a snack if you need to, and enjoy the presentation, but also the dialogue that's going on. And that leads directly into our second recommendation. Really be a part of the conversation tonight. This is not something that we want to be a sit and get, but certainly we want you to be engaged as well. So there will be a back channel conversation that Aaron's going to touch on in just a couple of minutes, but feel free to get engaged in that. And again, Alyssa and Annabelle and myself will be there shortly as well. And lastly, we ask that you share with your colleagues, especially those that aren't online with us tonight. But take a piece of what you heard this evening, or maybe some of the resources that you've gained, and go back and start that conversation locally, as far as with some of your peers, whether they be in your department or across curricular areas. Start the conversation that you learn from here and use that as a prompt to continue that, and encourage others to be able to join us next month in November. And the last piece of information is in regards to Act 48 credit. If you did sign up for Act 48 credit tonight, just remember that to receive your 3 credits, you also need to be able to sign up for the webinar for next month, both to register for the webinar and as well to be able to sign up for Act 48 credit. So I am really excited that we are here tonight, and we have the opportunity to be able to hear from Aaron Heintz, one of our great technology integration coaches who works pre-K to 12 for us. And Aaron is going to lead us in a conversation this evening around digital literacy. You see Aaron's contact information on screen, and he is a great individual to be able to follow on Twitter, if you're online on Twitter, at Aaron Heintz. So without further ado, Aaron, I am going to change the presentation over to you, and it should be coming over to you now. And Aaron, I did take a peek a little bit earlier at your presentation, and I understand that this is version 4.0.
That's right. So just before I start, can we see the screen? Everything's good?
Looks good.
And you can hear me? Excellent. So yeah, version 4. How did we get to version 4 already? It is our first webinar, and we're already at number 4. And you know, there's actually a lot to unpack in this title slide. And so I really appreciate, first of all, I want to thank the audience out there for attending. And I certainly want to thank you for the work you're doing in your classrooms with your students on a daily basis. And that really is why we're all here, is for that student in your classroom. So thank you for that. And yeah, version 4. So what is digital literacy version 4? And the reason we're on version 4, that's a great question, is, well, we have a remix of Doug Belshaw's book. And so that's really version 1, the essential elements of digital literacies. So that was version 1. And then I had the opportunity to be the keynote speaker at the Secondary Technology Academy at the end of last year. So that brings us to version 2. And now we have our newsletters. And so actually, as I'm going through the discussion today, really my goal was to provide an introduction and really to direct you to those newsletters, because each month what we've done is we've broken down Doug Belshaw's book, and we will be addressing it each month. And so that's really where we're going to have an opportunity to do that deeper dive, and there's resources and links. So that brings us to version 3, and then we have the version 4 today. And I really know that by the end of the year, I'm sure we'll be on version 7, 8, 9, and 10. And each time, with each new version, things change, it adjusts, and I'm really looking forward to getting to the end of the year and looking at where we are and where we came from. So that brings out, that works out the version part of it. We now have this idea of a remix. We need to talk about what a remix is. We have this idea of literacy, which in the Doug's book's title is plural. So we need to talk about why it's plural. And then, of course, we need to meet Doug Belshaw himself. So that's kind of where we're going. We're going to talk about what a remix is, what literacy is. We're going to meet Doug, and then we're going to dive into his work. So that's kind of the grand scope for today. As Bill mentioned, we'll be using today's Meet as a back channel in a few minutes. It's a free tool that I really loved. I used it in my own classroom for discussions, for sharing resources. One of my co-teachers, actually, I saw her use it as a manner for review for her students. So she created a today's Meet, and her students went in there and populated it with information and resources for their upcoming exam. And certainly I want to discuss this presentation itself. Normally I provide a copy of the link in advance. For today, Alyssa and I discussed this, and it was just going to be too many links. So you will receive a copy of this presentation with the archived video in an email tomorrow. So you'll get this presentation and the copy of the webinar. In the presentation itself, there's lots of links. Pretty much every image in here is hyperlinked, and so I really do. There's going to be a lot of challenges today. I think as I was working through this, I think there's 5 or 6 challenges that I'm going to give you guys today, and that first one will be to come back to this presentation and click through some of the links and explore some of the resources. So with that being said, we need to move on to this first idea of what is a remix. And there's a lot of different ways that we can do that. There's we see remixes in literature, we see it in art, and we also see it in music. And if anyone has ever walked past my classroom, or if you were at the Connolly Summer Tech Academy, you probably heard my room before you got to it. There was always a lot of music that was being played in my room, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about why I used music in my classroom and how I used it. But for right now, I want to start off by playing you a sample of a song. This is 1979, a group out of Los Angeles, California, The Whispers, and their song, And the Beat Goes On. And we're going to listen to the first about 30 seconds of that song. And then I'm going to take you, of course, it's Philadelphia, so I got to bring out Will Smith, pride of West Philadelphia. And we're going to listen to his 1997 hit, Miami. Now, I know for me, 1997 was a pretty solid year. I won't ask where you guys were in 1997. I know that can bring up some painful or some happy memories. But so let's start off with 1979, The Whispers. And I totally clicked the wrong button. You didn't hear that one. This is The Whispers. There we go. That sounds a little more like it. Feel free to bounce a little bit. All right, so we have that backbeat going. Very memorable. So I'm going to take you from 1979 to 1997 with Will Smith's Miami. So here is 1997. Hear that same backbeat. Slowed down a little bit. Slightly different pitch. We go back to that whisper song. We can still hear that dun, dun, same one that Will Smith did in Miami. Just a little bit changed, but very similar. And so I think that song really exemplifies. We have the Whispers who started it, and then 18 years later, Will Smith and what he did in the music industry is referred to as sampling. So he took a sample. For us today, we're gonna call that a remix. So he took their song, remixed it, and came out with something new. And so I noticed that in the title, I mentioned that I'm remixing Doug Belshaw's book for this presentation. And so what I did is I took his original kind of that backbeat groove, and I chopped it up. And now I'm going to bring some new flavors into that party. And I want us together to really put that all together, to build it and to construct something new. So that's where we're going. But before we get there, I need to introduce you to Doug. So we have Doug Belshaw. Doug is from the UK, and he is a self-professed open educational thinker. And if you are familiar with the open education movement, it's a really exciting time, really in our digital age. So what the open educational movement is it's kind of taken some of the power that for many years has resided in the book companies and the publishers and giving it to teachers and students. As teachers are developing lessons, as they are building resources and generating content, teachers are starting to package that together and members of this open educational movement are putting those resources out there for others to use. And so all of a sudden, for schools who maybe couldn't afford that new textbook or couldn't afford a special kind of textbook, or for those in other parts of the world who don't have necessary access to them, now through the digital networks that we have created, they can get the resources that are up to date, that are modern, that have great content. And so Doug is a big believer of that open educational movement. Now, prior to being involved with that, he worked for Mozilla. So if you're familiar with Firefox, which is a internet browser, he was part of the Mozilla Foundation, working specifically on developing a web literacy map. He's been through the higher education system in the United Kingdom. He was a teacher. He was a school administrator. Originally got his bachelor's in philosophy, University of Sheffield. He moved on to his master's in modern history from Durham University, and now he has a doctorate from Durham University. And I want to start off by first of all giving credit where credit is due. And the majority of this presentation would not be possible without the work from Doug. Really, that was the starting point for this presentation. In fact, I think it was in our planning committee for the Summer Tech Academy where Doug's name was mentioned, and that really kind of started a chain reaction of exploring what Doug Belshaw was about, reading his graduate thesis, which there are links right there, which then ended up becoming an ebook, which I certainly recommend you guys checking out. It is, I believe it is free. I think he asked for like a 99-cent donation, but he is, as a member of that open education movement, all his materials are out there. He encourages people to grab them, remix them, modify them, just as we're doing here today. And I've had a lot of fun. With the time zone difference, I was hoping to bring him in here today, but I've been managing to email and connect with him on Twitter, and it's really exciting. And I encourage you to also follow him on Twitter. His Twitter name is down there. He has a monthly newsletter he sends out, which is really about kind of some big picture educational movements, philosophies, strategies, with some great humor and really all packaged together. So I encourage you to find his ebook, go to his website, sign up for the newsletter, follow him on Twitter, and then in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen, you see that he did a TED Talk, I believe back in 2012. Now, if you have ever seen a meme, or LOL cat is a very popular one. Sometimes it's you see the little baby. It's called Success Kid. He's going like this. He's on the beach. He's really happy. He has a whole. His TED Talk is really focusing on these digital literacies and memes. So it's fun, it's exciting, and I definitely recommend adding that to your YouTube queue of videos to watch. So now that we've met a little bit about Doug, we know kind of who he is. Now I want to take you to the next part of the presentation where we talk about what is literacy, who is literate, in fact. And I think that really the first thing to do here is really kind of to dispel a myth. We have this idea of literacy being like a light switch, it either being on or being off. And that's really not the case. Literacy exists on really a sliding spectrum. And we all have areas of our life where we tend to fall towards that more literate end of the spectrum, and other areas in our life where we fall towards that less literate area of the spectrum. And specifically when talking about literacy, of course, the first thing everyone thinks about is reading. But literacy is much more than just reading. So it's not ELA specific. So for example, I am a huge fan of all things culinary. I love the Food Network, Alton Brown, Cutthroat Kitchen, Chopped. And so when I think of my sense of my culinary creativity, my techniques, I really tend to consider myself more on the more literate end of the spectrum. That's something I really enjoy. It's something that I do in my free time. And in fact, for Temple Homecoming's coming up, I'm going to do a whole barbecued roast pork. I'm really excited about that. So if you're in the area, you smell pork, just come knock on my door and I'll make you a sandwich. Another area of my life where I consider myself to be decently literate is going to be in basic car repair. It's something that I grew up doing, and I really enjoy and kind of take some pride in being able to go out there and tinker on the engine and fix it and hopefully not cause a bigger problem than existed in the first place. That's always a good thing to do. So those are two areas in my life that I feel on the more literate side of the spectrum. But of course, there are also areas in my life where I don't fall on the more literate, and I tend to fall in the less literate area of the spectrum. And certainly when it comes to music, I am a huge lover and fan of music, but I can't play it very well. And I know in 6th grade we had the guitar in guitar class, and I had a guitar at home. I wanted to learn how to play the guitar, and I think I got maybe 2 power chords. Unfortunately, one of my friends, he was actually adept at moving his fingers, and there's just something about that, adjusting your fingers on the frets, that I just couldn't wrap my head around. And so for me, that's definitely an area where I fall on the less than literate spectrum in terms of my guitar playing abilities. My wife is probably very happy about that as well. Another area, despite Frau Eichler's best intentions, foreign language, not a strong suit for me, and that's again another area where I'm on that other end of the spectrum of I'm a less literate than in other areas of my life. So really there's 2 main takeaways. One, the fact that literacy is not finite, it is not on or off, it is a spectrum, and the fact that literacy really applies in multiple areas of our life. And so this is the part of the webinar that I want to incorporate, the Today's Meet channel. Today's Meet is a phenomenal tool. It's basically a private chat message board. You'll hear the term, Bill referred to it as a back channel chat, and it's really phenomenal for a situation just like this where we have a presenter and then it allows, so I've used it in my classroom of watching a video and having a back channel chat go on, and because you can't stop the video and have a conversation. I mean, you can, but it certainly interrupts that flow of the movie. But if you use a tool like Today's Meet, you can still have your students engaged, responding to questions, participating while something else is going on in front of them. And so I wanted to certainly teach kind of a new tool, a tool that hopefully you can incorporate into your own classroom. But I also wanted to provide an opportunity for you as attendees to really get to know each other a little bit. And so I encourage you to feel free to, during the presentation, to comment, to ask questions, and to interact with each other. And if you see somebody post something, respond back and ask them for more information, more details, or share your own story. And so what I'd like you to do today, we're going to take a 30-second writing break. And what I would like you to do is I would like you to share one area of your professional life or your personal life where you fall on that more literate end of the spectrum. So I'm going to take 30 seconds, be a little musical interlude, and respond on that. And I'm gonna pop away for a second just to get a quick drink and mop my brow. But 30 seconds, what is one area in your life where you are more literate? So here we are back again, and I popped over the channel. I saw people discussing, and that is phenomenal. So I really encourage you, as throughout the presentation, continue to use that back channel chat. Now, I asked you to tell me one area where you are more literate. For the next question, I don't want you don't have to respond. but I want you to think about this, because I think it's important that we certainly focus on where we are more literate, but also it's important that we think about where we fall in areas of our life on that less than literate spectrum, or not less than literate, less literate. Because I think embodying the growth mindset, in order to grow, we need to identify those areas. And so challenge number, I guess, 2 of today is, what can you do to strengthen that area of literacy? What can you do to work on that topic? So definitely a challenge out there. Now, for those of you who recognized our little musical interlude, that was actually Grandmaster Flash's remix of Bongo Rock's Apache, a song that would later become remixed by the Sugar Hill Gang, and as the New York Times describes it, the national anthem of hip hop. Excuse me, when you get this slide deck, this Sugar Hill Gang is actually a clickable link. Oh, there we go. You see my screen? All right. Yay, people can see me. Sorry about that. So we have the Sugar Hill Gang, and if you click the link, it takes you through a whole history of the song, and it's a great read. It actually was a 1950s hit from the UK that's been remixed over 500 times, including by people like Missy Elliott, Sir Mix-a-Lot, Kanye West. So I throw that out there as a little bit of a musical trivia for you. So we've met Doug, we've heard some remixes, and we've talked about the scale of literacy. So now we need to talk about what Doug refers to as the 8 essential elements of digital literacies. And after talking about all the different literacies that I have, the culinary and the car mechanic, and all these areas of my life, it makes sense that in his title we have the term literacy that is plural of literacies. So it really makes sense that there are multiple ones in here. So here we have, this is kind of all the 8 elements together, and this is really, these elements form kind of a core matrix of overlapping literacies, and they all come together as part of this bigger part of digital literacy. And I think it's important to keep in mind that digital literacies are transient. They don't hold still. They're not in one place. They change over time. They may involve different tools or different habits of mind, different thinking, different thoughts. And there's always dependent on the context in which we find them. And so I think that's something to keep in mind, that these aren't static. They change, they move, they balance. And we're going to see over this year that there's sometimes where one may rise above the others. So when Doug wrote his book, he focused on the cultural element. And we noticed that the cultural element's in this top bar right here. So he chose to go with the cultural element as the most important. And the reason being is he felt that all the other digital literacy elements all fell underneath that umbrella of cultural. But for this presentation, I remixed it. So I moved, instead of cultural being the first one, I actually moved confidence to the front. And part of this presentation, I already mentioned a little bit about growth mindset. We talked about the fact that we identify those areas where we don't fall on the higher end of the literacy spectrum. And I think that confidence plays a really important role in that. And as we get through, I'm going to talk a little bit more about that. I won't give it away right now. But I think that for the first webinar of the year, as we're really starting off, I think it's important that we build up that confidence. We build that up in ourselves and in each other. On the right-hand side of the screen, there's a link. This is the intro message of Pope Francis' World Communication Day in June 2014. And it's a fairly short document. Again, I think challenge 3, I think we're up to. I really encourage you to click on that, take a look at it. because it has some really great messages, quotes, and examples that he worked in there. And in fact, we used his World Communications Day document and actually remixed that as part of our responsible use policy that we developed at the beginning of our year. And so this is one of those additional ingredients that goes into that mix. We have that initial baseline from Doug Belshaw, and we chopped it up, and now we're starting to add a little of that flavor into that pot. So we're grabbing and gathering our resources. So that's one that I really encourage you. Return to the slide, take a look at Pope Francis's message. So our first element we have is confidence. So developing the confident element of digital literacy really involves identifying those areas of lower literacy, and number two, managing our own learning in these digital environments. And I think that it's important to point out the fact that there are unique differences between the analog world that we exist in now and the digital one that we interact with as well. You know, one of my favorite tools in the digital world, as I was building this presentation, if I messed up or deleted something, there's an undo button. I love that button, whether it's that little arrow or I love the you know, Control Z, or for my Mac users out there, Apple Z, and it undoes something, and I use that all the time. The real world, there is no undo button. So, you know, we have those differences that we can undo something in the digital world, we can't undo something necessarily in the real world. And I've paired this first element of confidence with a quote from Pope Francis that says, "We need to recover a certain sense of deliberateness and calm." And I really like this ability to be calm and to reflect, the ability to take the time to be silent, to reflect, to listen, to think about what we need, where do we want to go, and we need to be patient with ourselves as we work to grow our own literacy abilities. And I think so we have that calm portion, but we also have the deliberate portion, the fact that this requires some work on our part, that we need to focus on these ideas and to wrestle with these topics. And I encourage you again you're going to come back to this presentation and re-look at it and re-examine some of the definitions, and then hopefully as we go through the newsletters that you are doing a deep dive into the newsletters with us and checking out the links and seeing where we're going. So that deliberateness, that to remember that we need to work on this, I think is really something that's important as we build that confidence, that those abilities to become more sure of ourselves as we continue through. Our second element is the civic element. And really, in short, civic in the sense of to organize. And I particularly like this quote on the left-hand side here. The ability to understand and make use of, and ICT stands for Information and Communications Technology. So the ability to understand and make use of technology or digital literacy is proving essential to employment, success, civic participation, accessing entertainment, and education. And you know, I think certainly in you know the world currently, you know, we see the fact of how, you know, civic participation is important, how education is so vitally important, and we have this core kind of element of digital literacy of to organize. And I'm going to move over and look at Pope Francis's quote, where he said, "Good communication helps us to grow closer, to know one another better, and ultimately to grow in unity." And so I love this aspect of the civic pillar, that it's centered around this ability that literacy has in all its forms, really. I mean, for us to organize, to share, to connect with other people. And when we do so, when we do share and organize and connect with people, it really allows us to fully participate in society. And so my love of cooking and all things food, that lends me to, when I'm around other people, I can connect with those people over a shared love, and I love that opportunity to break bread with people and to get to know them and share a meal with people. I think it's a really special thing, and that same ability to connect and to grow in the analog world, we see that in the digital world as well. So, I mean, looking at this, we have Doug telling us that this is important to our civic participation, our entertainment, our education. We have Pope Francis saying that we need to grow in unity, and then our Archbishop here in Philadelphia, he has instructed us that one of our main responsibilities as educators is to equip saints, our students, for this world and the next. And as many new digital tools are developed and as the usage of these tools increases, we see that our mission of preparation extends beyond just the traditional classroom and really allows us to connect outside. I love the fact that the learning doesn't stop when they leave our room. And I think that's exciting. Learning is not just contained by four walls. It's pervasive, and I like the fact that we can continue, because 45 minutes, I have more to say than I have time in that class period, so I like that I can go beyond that and to use this civic pillar to organize. But the other thing these three gentlemen, Doug, Pope Francis, and our Archbishop, have really brought up to us, it raises really some interesting questions as educators. And this is one that certainly in the newsletter we're going to really explore some of these questions. But how can we as teachers help our students master the use of all these different digital tools? How can we help them to use those tools to, as Pope Francis says, grow in unity? How can we as educators use digital tools to grow closer as a community? I think these are some really important things that we can start thinking about and addressing, not only with ourselves and our colleagues, but even to the students. To ask the students, how can these digital tools help you grow closer in unity? How can you become a full participant in society? And I think that's really exploring the civic nature of all these digital tools that we have. So I'll move on to our third pillar, or element, as Doug refers to them as, the communication pillar. We all need to understand how to communicate. There are so many tools available. In fact, I've seen it on TV that Google has just released a new video calling app called Duo. It's supposed to be simple. It's supposed to work across any phone, any platform, which is great. My mom has an iPhone. I'm rocking the Android. We can talk, Mom. It's coming, so we can video chat soon. And so I'm excited to try this new tool. But with all these new tools that are out there, we now are like, well, what tool is the best one? I mean, I have Facebook Messenger, Hangouts, Messenger. There's Skype. We have all these tools to communicate. So how do I choose the best one? What is the best one? And when I'm looking at that tool, what are the norms, the etiquette behind that tool? If you've been on Twitter, you know that there's a certain Twitter etiquette in how people communicate on Twitter. In fact, I remember growing up, really the only digital technology we had in our home at that time was the phone on the wall. But I remember my mom sitting me down and teaching me the etiquette behind answering the phone of what do you say when you answer the phone, and what do you say when you take a message, and how do you end a phone call? What do you say to say, like, hey, it's all over? And in fact, I was watching, I think it was Jerry Seinfeld on the Colbert show, and he was talking about text messaging. He said there's no way to hang up. There's no end. Whereas a phone call, you say, okay, thanks very much, I'll talk to you soon, click, goodbye. Text messaging, there's like, are we done? Are we still, are there, you get the three little dots that pop up and they're like, what's going on? So I think it's all those little bits of finesse that each tool has. So looking at the communications pillar, I really wanted to look at this element quite literally. because I know that as teachers, we spend a great amount of our time communicating with our colleagues, communicating with students, communicating with other staff members, parents, administration. And so I wanted to take this opportunity to bring in Alyssa and Annabelle and have them share with you some of their communication tools that they really like using. And so, Alyssa, if I could ask you to pop in here, what communication tool do you really like to use?
So I feel like my whole life revolves around communication. First, I can say I have the Duo app from Google because I have a Google Pixel, so it works and it's great. So call your moms everywhere. I think in my personal life, I wind up using FaceTime quite a bit, so that piece in there is really great. With families and students, and I know we talk about it a lot in the Archdiocese, but I am really going to give a plug to Remind, being one of my very, very favorite tools for communication with students and parents in the classroom. Safe communication, it's easy, you don't have to give anything out. I schedule, you know, when you get your AoP Tech ones, that's usually me sometime on a Monday morning scheduling it, whether you get it Wednesday afternoon at 2:30 when school gets out or Thursday morning at 8:30 a.m. So that flexibility really helps me communicate, you know, easily and effectively without having to be tied to a device every moment of my day, which is a really great thing. And I know that it's universally loved. I'm in several different PLNs with ISTE and other groups, and everybody talks about classroom-wise how much they love Remind. So I will give that a little bit of a plug. And then personal life, I've been loving the FaceTime / Duo. It's great.
That's wonderful. Thank you. Those are really, I mean, I love getting those text messages because that really, when I get that text message from you, I know to go and register or sign up, and I like the fact that it goes right to my phone. So that's amazing, and it's exciting to hear that Duo is a solid application. I'm excited to try it.
And I'm going to share one real quick that just came into the today's meet, if you don't mind, Aaron, because if you have folks, I always forget this, I use the same one, the WhatsApp.
Okay.
Someone here is using it to communicate with folks in Brazil. I use it to communicate. My cousin lives in Amsterdam, and I always forget that one, but if you know folks internationally, that's a great tool to use as well. So I thought that was really worth sharing. Sorry about that. Thanks.
That's awesome. No, thank you. That's really cool. And Amsterdam, wow, I definitely would love to go to Europe and just travel around. So that being said, I want to turn it over to our newest member of the tech integration coaching team here at AoP Tech. Ms. Annabelle, how about you? What classroom communication tool did you really like to use in your classroom?
I think I'm going to echo some of the ones that I'm seeing in our back channel here. But in the classroom, Twitter is a big one. Tweeting out was a way to let parents know what's going on in the classroom. So just little snippets here and there, we going back and forth. So it was a great way to communicate, not just with the parents, but also for me personally, getting to know educators that I would probably not have a chance to ever connect with otherwise. And I've been on Twitter for about 3 years now, and I can tell you I've learned so much from educators sharing everything out there, and it's just a great way to share ideas in a quick fashion.
No, I know, and you sound like the person to go to for this question. That when people get involved with Twitter, a lot of times there are Twitter chats. Are you familiar with that? Have you heard about them? Have you done any of them?
I haven't participated lately, but there are, and depending on the topic that you're interested in, there are chats. I know Catholic Ed Chat. For Catholic educators, meets regularly on Saturday mornings. So depending on what you're interested in, there is a chat for that, and it's neat because they meet regularly, usually at a set time and a set day. So, you know, whatever you want to, whatever topic you're looking for, there's a chat for that. And it's great because they have, the topics range for whatever you're interested in. So
That's
great way to communicate with others.
Well, thank you, Annabelle, and thank you, Alyssa, and thank you for those in the back channel chat. I opened it quickly. I saw a lot of good discussion and conversation taking place, so that's excellent. I love the fact that you guys are sharing ideas and communicating with each other, and thank you to both you, Annabelle, and to Alyssa for sharing those really great communication tools. For our fourth element, Doug has identified the cultural element, and I mentioned that this is the one he put at the beginning because he felt that everything kind of fell underneath that cultural element. And upcoming in our January newsletter, I've already kind of outlined where we're going. I really go into this cultural aspect, and so I certainly encourage you to look for that January newsletter. But today, one of the goals of this webinar is that we not only communicate this information, but that we grow as a community of educators. And so I wanted to move the cultural element away from the digital world for just a minute, and I wanted to look at how it applies to us as teachers. And in fact, specifically how it applies to our classrooms. So I mentioned that a lot of my classrooms were just pumping music. There was a lot of noise and excitement going on. And that was really part of my classroom culture that I very intentionally created. And that ranged from what I put up on the walls to the music that I was playing to how I greeted my students when they entered the classroom. It was all about creating this a culture of energy, of happiness, of excitement, of learning. And so what I'd like you to do is going to be our second musical break, if you will, is in the back channel, today's Meet chat. I'd like you to describe the culture of your classroom. And while we're doing that, I'm gonna play a little music, 1970s, the Chi-Lites, their song "Are You a Woman?" And this is gonna be the kind of like little mini challenge. See if you can identify the modern remix version. So I'm gonna give you 30 seconds to answer that question, the culture of your classroom. So I'd like to go to, if we can bring back Annabelle, if you can come back and just kind of what's going on in today's Meet conversation. And actually, before that, did you identify the new song, that song was remixed from the 1970s Chi-Lites?
No.
Oh. Somebody, so you know, let me play it again, because there's that first, right in the like 9 seconds in. Wait, that was in the middle.
Oh, somebody said Beyonce.
It is.
Oh, right.
Right here, where the horns come in.
Now I hear it.
There you go. That is right. Beyonce is correct. It was Jay-Z and Beyonce, "Crazy in Love." I love Queen Bee. So, what's going on in today's Meet conversation?
Lot. Great variety of classroom cultures. A lot of it is collaborative, which is great to hear. Safe and organized, and a lot of energy going on. in the classroom. So, but the biggest I would have to say is having a collaborative classroom, having the kids engaged with one another, not just one-way instruction, and yeah, a lot of energy, a lot of good stuff here. Cooperative, fun, safe. So, but the collaborative is really what's coming up as the majority.
I love it. That's great. Thank you. And thank you for the attendees out there for sending in those good things. That's really, really exciting to hear. And I love that idea of collaboration. That's exciting. And that really brings us into our fifth element here, the critical element. And the critical element really, when I hear this, it really, I had a professor when I was at Villanova. I was getting my master's degree. And it was my educational research class. And as she was teaching us to be critical of the educational research was out there, how do we evaluate what's a good source, what's not, what's a good study, you know, what was poorly done. She conjured this notion for us, and I think she put a picture of like Dumbledore up on the board, but it was of a curious skeptic, and I will imitate. So it was something like, and it was usually that wise, I'm considering it, but I'm also that like looking half askance, and the like, well, who's behind that? What are the motives? Is this good? Is it valid? Is it true? And of course, this ties into, you know, what we've been talking about in the national conversation of fake news and identifying, you know, the motives and support behind these ideas and information that we're consuming. And as Alyssa mentioned in the beginning of the presentation, this is there are two parts in this series. And so I wanted to take a moment just to bring Alyssa back in, because next month, Alyssa, you're going to be doing a presentation about this, correct?
Absolutely. So fits right into our themes, our elements of digital literacy, hitting on critical and civic, and communication most specifically. You know, today's teens and kids, they're inundated with a lot of news media. It's on their phones, it's on their social media feeds, it's available 24/7 on TV. And the difficulty that comes with it is really helping them to decipher all of that content that they're getting in safe ways. How do they become critical readers in an era where they're just inundated with a lot of information all the time, and not all of it is credible? So we're really going to look at helping students to be able to kind of weed through all that is out there in terms of fake news and news media, and helping them to be better readers of that kind of content. Different resources that you can use as teachers in the classroom to help them do so, and some great news outlets that you can go to for reliable information. So thanks for that plug. Join us again.
Certainly, and I hope that you do join us again, and thank you, Alyssa, for that little preview of what is to come. And so I certainly encourage you to sign up, and if you're watching this on YouTube or the archived version, I certainly encourage you to go to aoptech.org, our new website domain. So aoptech.org, and you'll just scroll down to that main page and you'll see the sign up link. And so we definitely encourage you to sign up and join us next month, where Alyssa will present on fake news and how we as teachers can help our students deal with that. And it sounds like there's going to be some really great resources. So thank you, Alyssa, for doing that for us. So I'll move over to our sixth element here. And the sixth element is cognitive. And here Doug really reminds us that all these digital tools are in some way helping to expand our minds. You know, exposure to various ways of building digital communities and environments and new ways of interacting with others all are part of our growth. And with each new tool, we really are adding kind of like a new lens to our vision. I did my undergrad at Temple University, and one of the things that Temple prides themselves on is their diversity of their student body, and the fact that They have a large component of international students, of students from other countries, of students from around our country. And at the time, I was an English major, and I saw how having all those different lenses really helped me grow as a student. So, you know, typically in English class, you read a story, you come into class, you share your thoughts, you share your discussions. And because there was such a diverse group within all of my classes, it gave me that opportunity to view a story through multiple lenses, to see it from different people's perspectives and through their eyes and their experiences. And that ultimately allowed me to grow. It allowed me to expand my thinking and change my mind. And so just like that additional lens that the diversity provided, with these digital tools, that's another lens that we can view things and interact and really to enjoy, to comprehend a bigger piece of that digital world. And I really, you know, I talked about I like to work on my car. And so, of course, while working on my car, you know, with each job, I get to then purchase like a new tool for my toolbox. So, you know, I had to replace the spark plug, so I got the spark plug set to be able to pull those out. You know, but if my toolbox isn't full of a wide range of tools, we've heard the analogy, you know, if the only tool you have is a hammer, the only problems you see are nails. And so I think that by having different tools and allowing our knowledge to really grow, we then can start to see, you know, different areas where we can reach out to help to connect. And we see some of those other elements start coming into this cognitive one. And you know, Bill mentioned me on Twitter, and I appreciate that message, and certainly I encourage you to connect with me there. And for those of you who do follow me on Twitter, about a week ago, you might have seen a very sweaty and perspiring Aaron. I had the opportunity, as part of the Archdiocese of Philadelphia Physical Education Department, they wanted to roll out a new tool. They're actually piloting a program called Slack. This is a program that really was developed for the business world. It's texting for business, if you will. But it was a new digital tool. And so the reason I was there, and I got the phone call from Bill, I knew it was going to happen, because, you know, I posted that message on Twitter, and I'm sweating, and I'm like, I'm at a PD for PE teachers. And it's like, what? Why? Well, what I did, I was there in the morning, I rolled out the Slack tool, and the teachers all got on, and then, you know, we started playing with it, and next thing I know, the chairperson, Miss Barb Nahn, brought in a coach, and next thing you know, we're doing a body weight boot camp, and I'm doing lunges and squats and burpees, and I had no idea what I was getting myself into. So not only did I grow and expand my own knowledge with this new tool, it really opened up a whole new world. I mean, Slack is really, really cool. Not only did I get to grow and expand in that way, I also got a nice workout. So definitely keep that in mind if any PE teacher invites you to attend their professional development to, you know, loose-fitting clothing. But it was a lot of fun. So it was definitely an opportunity that I had to expand my own abilities and mindset. So we're on the home stretch here. We're on the 7th element. And this is the element of the constructive element. And this element really focuses on our ability for information to be reused and remixed. And I know I've said that term several times throughout this presentation. I'll have to go back on the archive to get a final count on the number of times I've said remix and challenge. But you know, I mentioned the fact that this presentation was a remix of Doug Belshaw's books. We've heard songs that have later gone on to be remixed. One of my favorite paintings is the painting American Gothic. It's the picture of the husband and wife with the pitchfork. And that painting has been remixed hundreds of times. You can see the Obamas, the Simpsons on there, different political figures. Same thing with the painting Nighthawks. It's a great picture of I think it's 4 people sitting in a diner late at night. and that picture has been remixed with Batman and Superman and different people. Frank Sinatra's in one. So we have this idea of remixing, and I also mentioned that we in fact remixed Pope Francis's World Communications Day message with the 2017 AoP Responsible Use Tech policy, and that is linked below. And so after you, so that's the challenge. Let's see, I think we're on 4 or challenge 5. After you go read Pope Francis's speech, I encourage you to take a look at our responsible use policy, and for nothing else, just to see how that quote from Pope Francis is really inspired and was implemented in that responsible use policy. And we're going to take this 7th element, the constructive element, and it pairs so well with our final element here, the element creative. And as a teacher, certainly as an audiophile, but really as a teacher, I really love this idea of remixing. And I think the remix comes alive when paired with this creative element. And that was especially true in gathering material for my lessons. You know, very often I didn't want to have to start from a blank slate. I didn't want to have to create something from the ground up. And at times I did, but as teachers, we all know that takes time, it takes energy, it takes, I mean, even making multiple choice questions, I struggled at, you know, making the answer, that's easy, but then you have those distractor choices, and like, how do I make an answer that's close, but doesn't give it away, and that takes a lot of time for me. And so one of the tools that I used in my classroom was Kahoot. And in part, the reason I used it was because Kahoot has an incredible library of questions. And I want to see if I can bring this up, and hopefully you should be seeing. So I'm in my Kahoot, and if I could just get a quick message from someone to make sure that this can see as I switch my windows.
You're good.
So, oh, thank you. So when I'm in Kahoot, and whether I put in the topic we were learning, or if I put in my my textbook, and that was one that I did often. So I grew up both as a student and then as a teacher using the Sadler Oxford level A through, I think I got to F or G, somewhere in there, vocabulary. And I did it as a student, and then I taught it. And as a teacher, you know, to have to create this review activity from scratch would take me a long time. But here I've gone into Kahoot, I put in the name and just the book, and we can see that there are hundreds of activities that people have already created. And I love the fact that when I found that activity, this is kind of a bonus power user tip. Let's say I really loved this Kahoot. A lot of times, notice that I can hover over the username, and I can click on the username, and we can see the fact that this person, not only did they do lesson 2, lesson 4, lesson 3, lesson 1, and so honestly, I would just go down the side here, and it's blocked by my communications window here, but I think you can see it on your screen, and I would click the duplicate or the favorite, because if they made one that was really good, and especially I would look at the user, if it was a teacher, they might have, you know, chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3, and I would copy all of those. And the beautiful thing about Kahoot is the fact that I could take something that someone else started, and I could remix it to fit my class, my students' needs. And so whether that meant changing some of the wording around, or adding a picture, or removing a question, or adding my own, or just leaving it as is. But it was one of those tools as a teacher that I really like, that combine that constructive element and that creative element all in one kind of nice basket. And so I definitely, if you haven't checked out the library on Kahoot, I really encourage you to do that, and put in some textbook names and see what pops up. I think you will be pleasantly surprised. And certainly if you're not using Kahoot, if you're using quizzes, or if you're using a Quizlet Live, they have very similar libraries where you can put in like the textbook or a specific search term, and you can borrow and remix somebody else's assessment. And this brings up on the right-hand side of our screen, we see the two words new and original. And I think a lot of times as teachers, we, and really, I mean, as digital individuals that we sometimes confuse new and original. So the Kahoot activity that I used as a review or as an introduction was not original. I copied it from somebody else. Just like Will Smith and that song Miami that we heard back at the beginning, that wasn't original either. He took that 1979 group, The Whisperers song, and he remixed it. So the song and my Kahoot, neither one were original, but they were both new. And so now we got to look at, well, why? What was different between the original and that new thing that was created? And so, first of all, I want to caution you that new does not mean original. Really, when we refer to something as new, there's something in there. There's an idea, a song, a message that has really added some additional value. And so I think when we see the fact and we're trying to identify, is this new, is this original, look for that value. Because this is where I think we see that creative element really come into focus. So when we're looking at something and evaluating it as its value, as its new, as its originality, of course, this all depends on the context in which it is used. So just like this presentation itself is certainly not original. All the credit should go to Doug Belshaw, but it is new because there's an added value that wasn't there in his original, but is here in this new presentation. And so the creativity, that element really drives, that's the engine that drives the new value. And I think we can see this if you think about the SAMR model, specifically the last two parts, the transformation step, and we get to the modification and the redefinition elements, and that's where we see when we're asking our students to analyze, to create, to transform something, that's where we see that creativity really take over. And so we're rounding out our elements, and so certainly I want to provide an opportunity for you guys to post comments or questions in the Today's Meet channel. But before I get to the part of answering your questions and hearing your comments, and I'm really excited, I can't wait to go through to Today's Meet and just see what you guys were talking about, because that'll be really exciting. I need to address a question that I actually posed to you about 90 minutes ago. If you believe it, time has flown by. So I want to come back to that first question that was on that title slide. What is digital literacy? And you'll notice that, throughout this entire presentation, there wasn't a slide that said digital literacy is, and a definition. As Doug says, I think as educators we often like those big umbrella terms. And the reason that I haven't given you or provided you a definition is really because I want, and myself and the AoP Tech team, we really want you out there, the attendee, the teacher who's taking time out of their night to spend with us, and we thank you very much for that. We want to bring you in to that conversation. And so just to kind of bring all of those challenges I've mentioned together, I challenge you to take a look at our monthly newsletters. In each month, we're going to do a deep dive into each one of these elements. I've provided links, resources, and yes, even the occasional musical selection. And really, over this next year, we are going to answer that question of what digital literacy is together. That's why I started with that element of confidence. I know that for us to grow our knowledge, we first need to grow our confidence. I know so often that the reason people don't explore or try new digital tools is because it's scary, and it's challenging. It's, well, I don't know about this tool. How do I use it? What am I going to do with it? And before we dive into trying to look at tools, we need to make sure that we have built up our own confidence, that we empower ourselves, that we empower our students, we empower our colleagues to grow, to build that confidence together, to support each other as we begin this journey, because it's not a journey that we're taking on our own. It's not a journey that we're starting off on, individually. This is a journey that we're taking together as educators, as teachers, as AoP Tech or members, and as archdiocesan members. That we really are growing and building this together. So I encourage and challenge each of you to continue this conversation with us over the next year. I encourage you, I challenge you to bring this conversation to your colleagues, maybe even to your students. Ask them their thoughts on digital literacy. Give it to your friends, your educator friends, your colleagues. Share the articles, and whether that means printing out the newsletter and putting it in people's mailboxes, or leaving it in the faculty room, or emailing it to your friends. We just really encourage you to bring them into the discussion, because we want them to be a part of this discussion with us. And so with that, I would like to really come back to that today's meet that you put in there. So Bill, can you give us a final update on the today's meet chat? Any comments or questions in there?
Well, I tell you what, it was, certainly a great way to be able to engage, with everybody here as you were presenting, Aaron. No specific questions have come across, but really just, a lot of tips that came across, some affirmation in regards to some tools that are being used in the classroom, some things that, are supplements for, for our digital citizenship curriculum, and things that, like a platform like Kahoot is beginning to partner with another, certainly reputable platform in National Geographic. So, for our first official back channel chat during one of our webinars, it was really a great opportunity for all of our attendees to be able to connect. And I want to thank everybody. And certainly, if you still have any questions, feel free to drop them in there, and we can take a look at them and answer them.
That's wonderful, and I really enjoyed, and I want to definitely thank Alyssa and Annabelle for being part of the presentations, for sharing their communication tools, and for kind of being able to go to them and to say, hey, what's going on, and to hear about all the things that are being shared, and the areas of high literacy that people shared in the channel. That was really exciting to hear, and I'm really looking forward to, after we finish here, to going back and looking through that chat. It's just a final moment before I pass the controls back to you, Bill. The chat is set up to be open for the next week. After that time, it will go away. So if there's a resource, or if there's a tool in there that someone mentioned that you want to write down, go ahead and you have some time to copy it, to write it down. But it will kind of disappear in the next week. And if you're using it in your classroom, you'll notice that no one had to sign in. Now, I did create an account, and that does allow me to set up that how long will the channel be available. Will it be there for an hour, for a day, a week, a year? You also have the ability to control who has access to it. So you can actually ask students to create accounts and logins if you want to. Personally, I never did that, just because it was easy for them to put their name and jump right in there. But it's a really powerful tool, free. And if you go to todaysmeet.com, you can check it out. And unless we have any questions, I'm gonna pop this back to you, Mr. Brannick. And there's two of you on here, so let's see. Did I go to the right one?
I got it. Thanks, Aaron.
Certainly.
I appreciate it. And certainly, again, if you have any questions, feel free to pop them in the window. Certainly, Aaron, I would like to thank you for all of your time and preparation for our webinar this evening. Certainly, we can see that there is certainly a number of hours spent putting this together, so I'm grateful for all of your preparation this evening. Thanks, Aaron.
Thank you. And thank you for attending out there, and thank you, Bill, for hosting this and running it. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely, Aaron. And I also want to thank Alyssa and Annabelle who popped in and out of the webinar, and we're also on the backside in filling in the questions there as well. Certainly a lot of great dialogue going on from the learning that we were engaged in tonight. A couple of times they were mentioned this evening, but certainly I do want to be able to follow up with you. Just a couple of things. As mentioned, we do want to be able to engage you. You know, there are a lot of schools in the Archdiocese, and we don't always have a lot of one-on-one FaceTime with all of our educators in the system. And we want to be able to have that platform to be able to engage with you in further dialogue and conversation, and allow that dialogue and conversation to be able to spread within your buildings. So we encourage you engaging with us on, you know, one or many of the social media platforms through AoP Tech, and again using the hashtag AoP Tech on social media. We have a lot of resources that we've put into to the website over the summer, and have renamed it to aoptech.org to simplify things. All of our newsletters are there. Our registrations for the webinars are there. Our digital citizenship curriculum, and a lot of great resources to be able to go to as teachers within the diocese. And also the Remind group, AoP Tech. If you're on Remind, a great opportunity again to be able to get some tips, some early notifications of special events through AoP Tech. I know it's tough. We have to send a lot of things through our administrators, and they get a lot of email that comes through to them to be able to pass along to you. So if you join that AoP Tech group on Remind, you will have a lot of things that will come directly to you through that group. As Aaron mentioned, throughout this year in our newsletter series, we will be focusing on different elements of digital literacy. This is not just a 1 month or 2 months where we hit this. There will be a different aspect of digital literacy in each of our monthly newsletters. So look for those coming through from your administrators, but also know that they are housed on our AoP Tech website as well. I don't see any other questions that are coming through the back channel, so I want to be able to thank once again Alyssa and Annabelle for all of your work this evening in supporting this, and certainly Aaron, thanks for all of your work in the preparation for the webinar this evening. But most importantly, I want to be able to thank you, all of our colleagues, our teachers, even our administrators who are here on the webinar this evening. It's great to be able to kick off this 2017-2018 academic year with you in this Connected Educators Month. And all I ask and challenge you is to continue that conversation as you go back into the classroom tomorrow, and as you are in your school community, continue that conversation there, and then join us online at AoP Tech to engage with us. So with that, thanks everybody. I hope you have a wonderful evening. I'm going to stop the recording and then end the webinar shortly. Have a great one. Thanks everyone.